Imagine awakening before the first ray of sun paints the horizon golden, wrapped in morning mist that slowly creeps between limestone columns extracted from Lizio's quarries. Your muscles ache deeply, the result of another night poorly slept on hard, cold ground, covered only by a straw mat that long ago lost any trace of softness. You have no proper name, at least not your true name, the one your mother whispered when you were still a child, dreaming of freedom. Now you have only a number engraved on a bronze plate hanging from your neck, a specific task that defines your entire existence, a function that summarizes what you have become in your owner's eyes.
As a slave in Rome, during the empire's height stretching from the Atlantic to the Euphrates, your existence is defined not by personal desires, dreams, or aspirations, but exclusively by orders that arrive like verbal lashings.
The day invariably begins with the harsh, impatient voice of the overseer, echoing in the house's atrium, a man usually a freedman who now exercises power over those still living in the condition he once knew himself. There is heavy water to carry in ceramic amphorae from public fountains to private reservoirs, marble floors to scrub with rough sponges until they shine like mirrors, fine linen clothes to wash in the river with soap made from ashes and animal fat, and no pause between one exhausting task and another even more draining. The patricians' houses, erected like small palaces with internal courtyards decorated with mosaics representing scenes from Greek mythology, demand perfection in every detail, but offer only chronic fatigue and constant pain in exchange for your forced dedication. You might be a famulus serving inside the main house, silently moving through corridors decorated with frescoes depicting idyllic landscapes you will never visit, or perhaps a service rooster working under the blazing sun on interior farms where golden wheat and centennial olive trees grow, irrigated by the sweat of hundreds of enslaved men and women. Each group has its own specific routine of physical and emotional wear. In the city, surrounded by the ostentatious luxury characterizing Roman urban life, the stark contrast between the opulence around you and your social invisibility becomes a constant source of psychological torment. Exotic fruits brought from Africa and Asia, brilliant mosaics telling stories of gods and heroes, perfumes of roses and jasmine floating through the air, soft music performed by virtuoso masters. All this composes the majestic scenery you maintain impeccably clean and organized, but from which you can never participate as a full human being.
If you make a mistake, even if it's just a distracted gesture or a moment of fatigue after hours of uninterrupted work, punishment can be devastatingly severe.
Punishment comes not only in physical form, lashings that leave permanent scars, red-hot irons that mark skin as symbols of ownership, but also in public humiliation, food deprivation, forced separation from family and friends. Nothing in your life truly belongs to you, not your body, which can be sold, loaned, or mutilated according to the owner's will, not your thoughts, which must conform to expectations of absolute civility, not your life, which can be ended without legal or moral questioning. In the silver mines of Cartagena and the marble quarries of Carrara, reality becomes even more devastatingly harsh. Narrow, dark caverns where sunlight never penetrates, where you spend days breathing stone dust that accumulates in lungs like a slow death sentence, constantly feeling the crushing weight of the mountain above your head. Many companions simply don't emerge from there. Their lives extinguish in earth's depths, far from any human comfort. Public slaves, charged with great works symbolizing imperial power, aqueducts bringing water from distant regions, amphitheaters where gladiators die for mass entertainment, temples dedicated to emperor's glory, live in improvised tents and overcrowded barracks beside unfinished constructions.
They sleep lulled by the constant sound of hammers striking metal and stone, wake before dawn to the harsh shout of the centurion responsible for the work, labor until darkness makes it impossible to distinguish one stone from another.
Some literate slaves, usually Greeks captured in conquest wars, apparently have better luck. They work as secretaries, copyists, private tutors, or librarians in intellectual elite Roman houses, but even they live with constant tension of being discarded at any moment, replaced by younger models, severely punished for a writing error or expressing an opinion considered inappropriate.
And even in apparently simpler, more routine tasks. There is constant, oppressive surveillance.
A look considered inappropriate directed at a free citizen can cost you the little rest of night. Streets are always full of observing eyes, guards, informants, and citizens willing to report any suspicious behavior, but completely empty of genuine compassion or human solidarity. Even small moments of relative relief, like a bowl of lentils seasoned with wild herbs at the end of an exhausting day, are consumed, hurriedly, always under punishment's constant shadow, always with awareness that even this small food portion is a concession that can be withdrawn without warning. The characteristic sound of iron chains dragging across stone floors, the muffled crying of another unfortunate companion trying to smother pain, so as not to disturb masters, the moans of the wounded who receive no adequate medical treatment. All these sounds become part of daily sonic landscape, a somber symphony that cradles the days and nights of those living as human property. And if, in a moment of desperation or desperate courage, you dare think of fleeing, of seeking beyond city walls the freedom that was stolen from you, prepare to face an implacable, systematic hunt. Rome possesses an efficient network of slave hunters, men specialized in tracking fugitives through techniques perfected over generations. Fleeing represents a calculated risk, but being captured means facing a considerably worse fate than original slavery itself. Punishment is always public, carefully planned to educate through terror, to discourage others from attempting the same path. Freedom exists, yes, but remains as distant and unreachable as the stars you observe in the night sky. In those brief moments before closing tired eyes, once again, to try sleeping in a place where you can never truly belong, where your humanity is denied each dawn. Spartacus, the gladiator who defied the invincible empire. The year is 73 BC, and in the depths of the pulsing heart of the Roman Empire, a silent rebellion begins to take shape in history's shadows. Spartacus, a man of Thracian origin whose true name may have been lost in time's fragmented records, had been captured during one of countless Roman military campaigns on the wild Balkan frontiers. Like so many other warriors from conquered tribes, he was sold as human merchandise, and subsequently forced to fight as a gladiator in Batitus School, located in the prosperous city of Capua, known for its amphitheaters and the deadly quality of its fighters. But there, among bloodied spears, swords, sharp as razors, and sweat mixed with blood that constantly covered the arena, Spartacus saw not just death and violence spectacularized for Roman mass entertainment. His mind, trained in military tactics and forged in tribal wars of his youth, perceived something deeper and revolutionary, a real possibility of transformation, a chance to convert the system's brutality into liberation force. Spartacus was not merely a set of muscles trained to kill and die in blood spectacle of games. He was a mind sharp as the blades he wielded, possessed clear strategic vision like an experienced general, and intuitively understood that the arena did not represent the only possible battlefield for his personal war against oppression. He secretly studied guard movements, memorized security routines, observed structural weaknesses of the school that held him prisoner, and then, on a particularly stifling Mediterranean summer night, when guards dozed, lulled by wine and heat, and hot winds brought indefinite omens of change and revolt, he led a meticulously planned escape. Beside him, 70 other gladiators and slaves, initially armed only with stolen kitchen knives, improvised sticks, and the desperate determination of men who had nothing left to lose except their chains. What began as a small local revolt quickly transformed into something extraordinary and threatening. Within weeks, the fugitive group had grown to 1,000 people. Then within months, 10,000 men and women of all low social conditions, rural slaves, miners, urban artisans, defeated soldiers, impoverished peasants, joined the movement that was beginning to represent a real concrete threat to Rome's political and economic heart. Spartacus, contrary to what many later historians romanticized, did not seek personal glory or individual revenge. His motivation was fundamentally human and universal. He simply wanted freedom. He wanted to walk without the weight of shackles cutting his ankles, sleep without constant fear of death with each nap, wake knowing the next day belonged to him by right. not by temporary concession from an owner. His heterogeneous troop was composed of men and women exactly like him. Miners with lungs full of stone, dust laundresses with hands permanently roughened by constant work, soldiers defeated in distant campaigns, peasants who had lost their lands to aristocratic latifundia expansion.
They established temporary camps in southern Italy's mountainous forests, trained with weapons captured from defeated enemies, developed guerrilla tactics adapted to irregular terrain,
and successfully faced the best generals Rome could send against them with growing success. Each battle won brought not only spoils of war, but also more liberated slaves who voluntarily joined the insurrection.
Rome, in its millennial imperial pride and absolute confidence in military superiority, initially completely underestimated the movement.
Senators sent unprepared troops, and arrogant commanders, blindly trusting in legions, numerical superiority, and deeply rooted belief that slaves could never represent a serious military threat to free citizens trained in war's art. But Spartacus and his followers repeatedly demonstrated that desperate will to live in freedom constitutes a practically indomitable military and psychological force.
For almost 2 complete years, from 73 to 71 BC, Spartacus managed to transform practically all of southern Italian peninsula into a vast field of organized resistance.
His forces burned rural properties, liberated entire villages of slaves, built elaborate defensive fortifications, established rudimentary systems of government and justice, created a war economy based on captured resource redistribution.
But Spartacus, demonstrating remarkable strategic wisdom, perfectly understood that definitive military victory could not be achieved on Italian territory.
Rome possessed practically unlimited human and material resources, and time worked inevitably in favor of the established empire. His original plan, carefully elaborated, consisted of crossing the Alps with his entire force and then voluntarily dissolving the rebel army, allowing each ethnic group to peacefully return to their regions of origin.
But a significant portion of his followers, intoxicated by consecutive victories and fed by dreams of accumulated revenge, wanted something more ambitious and dangerous.
They dreamed of marching directly on Rome, taking the empire's capital by force, sacking treasures accumulated through centuries of conquest, distributing among the oppressed all wealth that had always been systematically denied them.
This fatal internal division over the movement's strategic objectives ended up being the determining factor for its destruction.
While leaders inconclusively debated directions and priorities, the Roman Senate made a drastic and definitive decision. They called Marcus Licinius, the Republic's richest man and one of his generation's most ruthlessly ambitious politicians, to lead a campaign of total and implacable repression.
Crassus, with almost unlimited financial resources from his commercial operations and real estate speculations, organized a massive military force, characterized not only by tactical efficiency, but also by methodical, calculated cruelty.
He not only wanted to militarily defeat the rebellion, he intended to completely exterminate any vestige of hope among the empire's slaves, transforming repression into a terrifying example that would discourage future revolts for generations. With predatory patience and superior logistical resources, Crassus implemented a systematic siege strategy, methodically hunting each movement of the declining rebellion, cutting supply lines, isolating rebel groups, buying information from traitors, until finally cornering Spartacus's forces in a geographically unfavorable position.
The final decisive battle occurred on the banks of the Silarest River, in the region we now know as
Spartacus, knowing he was facing his final moment, fought with the desperate courage of a man who had chosen to die free rather than live enslaved. Later, historical accounts describe that he fell in hand-to-hand combat, sword still firm in his bloodied hands, completely surrounded by bodies of companions and enemies, fighting until his last breath for the cause he believed in.
His body was never found among the thousands of dead covering the battlefield, but his legend crossed subsequent centuries, inspiring resistance movements and slave rebellions throughout the Mediterranean world.
Crassus determined to create a lasting monument of terror that would discourage, Future revolts ordered public crucifixion of 6,000 captured survivors along the entire length via Apia, one cross every 30 meters from Capua to Rome's gates, a corridor of agony over 160 kilometers long, a monument to horror that remained visible for months.
But neither all the pain inflicted nor all the exemplary cruelty could completely erase what Spartacus had represented to the ancient world. The inextinguishable spark of human freedom shining courageously in an empire built on chains.
The immortal example that even the most powerful system can be challenged, when men and women decide they prefer to die fighting rather than live on their knees.
Silent life in the villas. Slavery perfumed with gold, you awaken long before the first golden ray of sun touches Tuscany's rolling hills, but not by personal choice or desire. In luxurious Roman villas strategically dotting the Italian peninsula's most beautiful landscapes, from volcanic slopes around Pompeii to Frascati's wine-producing hills, domestic slaves' lives are meticulously regulated by rigid protocols of absolute silence and unquestionable obedience. You are a service, a banus. A slave carefully trained since childhood to serve the Roman elite, with discretion bordering on invisibility, lightness of movement that doesn't disturb the refined atmosphere, and mechanical precision that never disappoints perfection expectations. The mansion where your owner lives represents a masterpiece of Roman residential architecture. Carrara marble columns imported at exorbitant costs. Elaborate floor mosaics representing mythological scenes executed by Greek artisans, ornamental fountains murmuring softly in constant, hypnotizing rhythm. And every sound you produce during daily activities is carefully calculated, not to break this artificial harmony. Air perpetually perfumed with essences of Damascene roses and oriental jasmine creates an ethereal atmosphere. But your body chronically aches from so much kneeling and bending in ritualized gestures of submission. Your breathing must be contained so as not to disturb contemplative silence. Your steps must be absolutely silent on polished mosaics. Your presence must remain functionally invisible, even when executing tasks directly before owners. The morning routine of patrician care invariably begins in hours preceding dawn. You carefully heat water in bronze cauldrons, mix imported essential oils, Provence lavender, mint from Asia Minor mountains, Emar from Arabian deserts. In exact proportions memorized through years of training, you organize the day's tunics according to complex criteria considering color, occasions, social importance, climatic conditions, and aristocratic fashion subtleties you may never wear. If the master is in good humor, perhaps influenced by favorable news of his business or pleasant correspondence from political allies, he might allow you to look at him directly for a brief second. An extraordinary privilege representing the maximum human recognition you can expect. But if he's in bad humor, disturbed by financial questions, or irritated by senatorial intrigues, just a minimal error, a spilled drop of water, an imperfectly folded tunic, a movement considered inappropriate, can result in severe punishment through humiliating shouts, lashings leaving permanent marks, or simply complete food deprivation for days. The villa possesses its own complex internal hierarchy rigorously observed. The literate slave caring for the personal library, organizing rare scrolls and precious is worth considerably more in the market than one charged with cleaning communal sanitary installations. The Greek pedagogue teaching rhetoric and philosophy to the owner's children enjoys relative privileges compared to the gardener maintaining exotic flower beds. But all, absolutely without exception, remain legal property, physically marked on the arm with hot iron, wearing metal collars with engraved plates, indicating their slave names and their legal owners' complete names. Even the hunting dogs, wandering freely through ornamental gardens, possess more fundamental freedom of movement and choice than any enslaved human being on the property. Animals can run, play, express affection, demonstrate preferences, basic freedoms systematically denied to slaves. At night, when long shadows extend through courtyards, decorated with statues imported from Greece, silence becomes even more oppressive and absolute. Masters receive illustrious guests. Senators, generals, poets, philosophers, wealthy merchants, for elaborate dinners, constituting true demonstrations of economic power and cultural refinement. You serve exotic dishes prepared by specialized cooks, flamingo tongues seasoned with oriental spices, fresh sea urchins served in ornamental shells, wild animal meats hunted in private reserves, tropical fruits from Africa transported in refrigerated ships, aged wines from prestigious wine regions. The elite's sophisticated laughter echoes musically between marble columns, punctuated by intellectual discussions about literature, politics, philosophy, and art. But none of the guests knows even the true name of who is discreetly filling their silver cups or silently removing empty plates. You are a functional shadow, a mechanical extension of aristocratic hospitality, completely invisible as an individual human being. During these nocturnal, you inadvertently witness the complex power games governing the empire, conspiratorial whispers about political appointments, subtle negotiations of matrimonial alliances, apparently casual decisions that can alter entire cities' destinies or determine military campaign success, and all while you must convincingly pretend to hear absolutely nothing, understand nothing at all, not exist as an observing consciousness. In some privileged moments, there is genuine beauty in the environment. Ethereal music from a lyre, played by a virtuoso, graceful dance of a courtesan trained since girlhood, hypnotizing aroma of incense, slowly burning in ornamental braziers. But for you, all this refined beauty constitutes only the aesthetically elaborate backdrop of an inescapable, existential reality of systematic dehumanization. Modern archaeologists, through meticulous excavations conducted over decades, have discovered preserved vestiges of these villas at sites like Pompeii, Herculaneum, and Stabi. Among fragments of decorated ceramics, frescoes miraculously preserved by volcanic lava, and mosaics still shining after 2 millennia, they also found disturbing evidence of slave life. Small rooms strategically hidden behind main kitchens, claustrophobic quarters without windows where servants slept, some still with iron chains attached to stone walls. On these somber cubicles' walls, archaeologists discovered touching inscriptions made by fingernails of desperate fingers, true names whispered in darkness, fragmented phrases in almost forgotten native languages, perhaps prayers directed to ancestral gods, day counts marking captivity time, love messages addressed to family members sold to other properties. Roman ostentatious wealth, with all its aesthetic sophistication and intellectual refinement, didn't represent merely material opulence. It was fundamentally human silence, systematically bought with organized suffering. The perfumed gardens, beauty, nocturnal musical harmony, courtyards, architectural all this was sustained by deliberate denial of humanity to thousands of people reduced to functional object condition. And as you lie down now, hearing echo through centuries this story of extreme contrast between beauty and suffering, perhaps you perceive with profound melancholy how even the most aesthetically beautiful and culturally refined places can hide immense human shadows. Let this reflection slowly glide through your tired mind, and allow the paused rhythm of this ancient memory, with all its sadness and complex beauty, to gently cradle your thoughts toward restorative sleep.